Hello everyone, welcome to episode 2 of Two Guys, One Couch.
Yes, it's a different couch this
It is
time,
indeed.
but it's rest assured we're still two guys.
Yes, Jory, good to see you.
You too, Nick?
Good to catch up.
Well, yeah. You know what? Fuck, we will address. So we received a comment in our previous video.
We have a hater.
Yeah, well, I appreciate anyone taking the time
Oh, yes.
to listen to what I have to say.
Yeah, no one needs to listen to
and-
this, and we're blessed that people have chosen to.
That's right. So wherever you are, I hope you're having a great day. And
Yes.
like you haven't made it until you have haters. So thank you for that.
Yeah, there was some particularly hateful comments on our YouTube video, but look, we move on. Life's not about hate, it's about love and respect, and that's why we're all here, you know? Need to fight for unity.
Yes.
A lot of disunity in the world.
Yeah.
A lot of escalating conflicts. So I think it's important to remember that no need for that here, so please don't comment again.
Well, comment.
Well, you can comment, but
constructively, please.
yes, thank you.
Cool. So
This week, what's on the menu?
what's on the menu? So today, it's a new podcast. I'm gonna play around with the format
Okay.
a little bit.
Yep.
So last time we basically just dove straight into it and didn't sort of preface with what we were going to talk about.
Yep.
This time we might try that.
A preface.
Yeah. So we just say, hey, yes, this is broadly what we're going to talk about. Let us know if you like it, yes or no. But first thing to talk about is it's a chronic condition that afflicts many creatives. But basically, anyone with a hobby, it's a terminal case. It's nearly incurable.
I would say it is incurable.
There's only treatment for the symptoms,
Yes,
short-term symptomatic relief.
Yes.
And the condition in question is GAS, the gear acquisition syndrome.
Yes, I have been afflicted for many years. Commonly, I think it involves, you feel like to become your truest creative self, or truest any self, you need to purchase a piece of equipment or
Let's not get straight in.
a new item. But anyway, GAS,
So
gear
GAS,
acquisition syndrome.
and then the second topic will probably just be a bit of a musing about how we kind of view, or how we personally like to think of, the role of government in the modern world.
Yes, what is the role of modern government?
Yeah.
At this stage, it's up for discussion. I think
It is up for discussion.
modern governments do seemingly less and less with more privatisation and less government or publicly owned services. So it's interesting, something to explore at least.
Yes.
And then if we've got time, was there one more? Or was that's
No,
probably enough?
that's probably about it.
Pretty
I reckon.
meaty.
Yeah. We can just wrap up the government thing. 5-10 minutes tops.
Yeah, we'll
Question as old as time itself.
have that solved.
Easy.
Yep, we'll knock that
Okay.
over.
Yes. So GAS.
Yes, gas.
So when you think of GAS, Nick, does anything? Do you have a story of your life where
many
many tales?
stories. I think for me, so I think my first, well, maybe a bit of backstory. So in my broader life, I am what you would call a creative. So I'm a creative professional. I work in sort of film and TV, and there's a level of gear required to create or complete creative work. That could be as simple as a little camera or maybe some lights or blah blah blah. But I think early in my career, I fell into the trap of thinking that any shortcomings with my own creative output could be solved by better or more equipment. So this started off with, I think I'd sort of dabbled in photography for a while, and then I sort of convinced myself that I needed to buy a medium format film camera at a very early stage in my creative career, which was definitely not necessary. Fantastic, amazing camera.
Mate, you can flex. What was it?
I bought a Mamiya RZ67 Pro 2. Probably about 7 or 8 years
the
ago.
110 mil.
Beautiful, 110mm lens, the whole shebang.
F2.8, yeah.
Oh, it's a lovely piece of equipment. Like a studio photographer's dream. They've shot some amazing images on that camera. I bought that camera, and I took some photos, and they were awful. And that is, I guess, at the core of GAS. It's like, you're not happy with your work, so you convince yourself that to solve that problem or to solve any shortcoming, I need to purchase something. And that can be just about anything. And that applies to not just film and TV. It can be, as an artist, maybe the thing that's holding me back is I need better paint. I need a better paintbrush. It's all about the easel. It's all about, I need a better canvas. I need just stuff. You need things, hence gear acquisition. What about you, Jory? How's it affected your life?
Yeah, so it's interesting listening to you talk, because when you're talking about gas, for you, it sounds like it's something that you're looking at the output and you feel unhappy with, kind of thing. So it sounds like you're trying to solve like a technical problem in some way. So that could be like, you know, you want to light something, but you don't have a big enough light, sort of thing. So you need a bigger light for that. For me, I mean, I have some stories of like gas. Like I also bought like a medium format film camera that I used and like did sort of enjoy using. Bought like flashes and some other stuff. But for me, the reason I mean, the gas in my life feels like it's normally driven by like, yeah, being unhappy with what I'm producing and wanting to like, yeah, buy something to make that better. But it's as to why I'm unhappy with what I'm producing. I mean, I find that like, that's for me, maybe the core issue, because it's like, I know if I, at this point, from taking photos and videos and everything else, that using the gear that I do have to take a picture that I know, so like if I go on holidays, just bringing a little compact camera that I already own, you know, fiddling with the settings a little bit. So even on auto, it's pretty good. And just like, you know, actually going out and making something, I always feel that always scratches that itch in the short term. But yeah, I always do come back to like, I need to buy something. And it's just interesting, that revolving door.
But that's the thing. I think there's always something to buy. And like manufacturers but this is capitalism.
Yes.
There's always something to buy.
You're always incentivized.
Like there's always a problem or a...
That you didn't know you had.
Exactly. Or an emotional shortcoming or like your work doesn't have this particular feeling or value that you need it, you want it to have. Yeah. So you get sold a product which is going to solve that problem. And a lot of the time look, humans have been creating great art for a long time. Like this is sort of the conversation I have with people in film and TV. It's like, we shot and lit and produced iconic films, you know, in every era of filmmaking. You know, there's great films from the silent era all the way through to, you know, now. And back then they didn't have, you know, half the technology we had today. But the thing that shines through in those instances is story. It's the creative concept behind the technical filmmaking. Yes, you still need technicians and there's a level of technical skill required and you need equipment and blah, blah, blah. But like, it's not the answer. And every time I try and tell myself that, I almost brush it off. I'm like, but well, not quite. Like, it is consciously it's easy to say, but you actually mentioned something recently which sort of clarified some stuff for me. It's like, what emotional need are you trying to solve by purchasing this? Because I've convinced myself that it's all technical requirements, but you're usually trying to solve you're usually trying to scratch an emotional itch, and that sort of broadens this conversation to not just gear, but also just buying things in general. Yeah. So I think the example you gave me was when people try and buy clothes or buy something to make themselves feel better about the way they look or the way they are or whatever.
Yeah. So to me, there's two parts of that, what you're talking about. So the first part is kind of like, you know, you make something, it doesn't look how you wanted it to. And so that brings up questions of like your personal identity, right? Where it's like, well, am I even a creative? Can I even like make it in this industry sort of thing? Do my peers in this industry even respect me if I can't make the things that I like want? And, you know, an answer to that can be buying things to try and make the thing that you want. But the core issue you're trying to solve there is making things which, you know, you are proud of and that people will accept you for. That can sort of be extended a little bit, in my opinion, to like, if you currently aren't producing anything. So if you're just like a hobbyist photographer sort of thing, and it's like, well, I'm not taking, like, you know, I started working full time a couple of years ago, and prior to that, I was taking pictures pretty regularly, like at least once a month. I would meet like a friend or something and take pictures of their car and something like that. And then once I started working full time, it just doesn't happen, right? Because I got to do all my shit on the weekend, like all my chores for the week. So that kind of went away. And I definitely have like a sense there of, you know, I'm not creating. And then like that was when gas got quite bad for me, because it was, you know, I've previously had somewhat of an identity of someone who takes pictures, being a photographer, and like not doing that, sort of like, well, why am I not doing that? And then it's like, you know, instead of grappling with the harder question of like, well, you're not making the time, you're not like, you know, yeah, you're basically just not making the time and not making the effort to do it. It's just like an easier solution to like the ego.
Need more stuff.
It's just like, well, I don't have the stuff that I need to do that. It's like, well, it's because the camera that I have, you know, it's like, it's a bit old, and so I'm spending too much time in post sort of editing it, so I need like a new camera. I'm missing focus because all my lenses are like manual focus film lenses that I'm adapting to a digital body, and I'm just missing focus, so I need it.
Yeah, and they're all sort of valid technical complaints, but yeah, when you recognize that it's actually just because you're busy and you're not producing, there's no output because you don't have time.
Yeah.
And then it becomes the harder question of like, how do I make time? You know, is this really important to me?
Yeah. Am I willing to let go of that little piece of my identity? It's like, yeah.
Yeah. And then it can be a salve. Like it's like, oh, well, if I just buy this, then I'm still a photographer because I've done the research. I still feel like I'm part of the group. I'm part of the gang.
Yeah.
We know what we need. It's the newest camera. I've read all the reviews. I'm part of the, you know, I'm in there. I feel part of it. And there is there is a sense of community, I guess, in that like reviewer space. Like, oh, did you see so-and-so's review? Oh, did you see this review?
What did Petapixel say?
Yeah, what do all the websites say? You know, like, oh, what's the best price? Oh, if I trade this in, like, and then it becomes like almost like a spreadsheet game of like, oh, I'll trade this in and I'll buy this, and if I get this discount, and then if I wait for the sale, it's like, oh, it's actually not that much money, and you know, like, and it just fills your time. Like, it fills your time, but you're not actually creating anything. But it feels like you're sort of on the path to creating. So it feels like it's valuable, and I think. That's why I think barriers to creativity are really useful. Like if you can challenge yourself to make an image with that old camera or with that old piece of whatever, or just using what you have, I think it's probably way more valuable for your creative process than just buying new stuff. Because like we all have a friend who has like a very expensive camera and just takes awful photos.
No names,
but they exist. They're everywhere. And it's usually older men, you know, people that have got a bit of time and a bit of money and have hobbies, and you know, this is their hobby and they want to spend big and they have the money to do that. And then it's like, but your images or like, you know, your art or whatever you're trying to create doesn't really have that sense of place or sense of self because you haven't invested that time in working out what your personal style is or what your personal taste is.
Doesn't feel like uniquely yours.
No, and that can extend to other, like, you know, that can extend to people who just dress trendy, you know, like they don't really have a personal sense of fashion. It's just like, this is it, you know, this is the thing that everyone's wearing. I'm just going to buy it because it's cool. And then you could sort of get stuck in that, it's like cycle of buying stuff because it's in and it's hot and it's like, this is so it right now. And that extends to broad swathes of life. It's not just fashion and cameras. It's like, you know, statusy stuff. It's like houses. Oh, we did a reno. Yeah. The kitchen. I've got to have the new fucking cabinets. I've got to have the new stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So like on the topic of like the identity aspect of it in terms of, I'm not creating. I need to buy something so that I can create and so that my identity isn't like put into conflict. I think that's a non-zero part of it as well is just like the status aspect of new shit. Because there's status games within creative stuff. So it's like, just making something which is good is a status symbol in some ways. Like if you can make a photo or like if you light something and it looks fucking good, like within that industry, that's like respect there. But then there's also like, you know, the superficial aspect of like you have something expensive essentially and people just being like, damn, that's nice. Like you talk about, typically older men who have like fuck off cool cameras. You're like, damn. You're like intellectually, it's funny because you're like, you know, maybe I don't like your pictures that you take so much or anything like that, but it's like right now I'm green. I'm so jealous.
Yeah.
God, I wish that was me.
And that sort of goes, I mean, even within filmmaking, there's people that, you know, will just flex. It just flex. It's like with social media and with all sort of public avenues of advertising, it's like, check out my sick new camera. And it's not even about the product you make. It's like there are people in film that just post photos of the gear. You know, you'll never see their actual work.
I mean, the penultimate example of this, right, is like, you remember that trend on like Instagram Reels of people with like a waist level viewfinder, filming going down into a waist level, not even taking the picture,
just seeing it through the camera.
Just seeing the expensive camera on the Arca Swiss tripod.
With the beautiful vista, like, you know, and that trend's sort of gone, and it was just a trend. But
what do you think about like so taking like walking back to something you spoke about before, where I mean intellectually I know, so every time I get gas, I know that the answer to the gas isn't like, you know, if I buy something, I feel good in the short term, but I know that like a better, more like holistic solution is to actually just make something.
Totally.
And I know that if I pick up the camera I already own and I like take my dog to the park and take a picture of my dog, or like, you know, I wake up relatively early one morning, take a picture, or it's jacaranda season at the moment. If I like time the afternoon light so I can take a picture of like a particular tree on a street that I walk past, I'm going to look at that and I'm going to be like, hell yeah, nice. All thoughts of a Nikon Z52 banished. Gone. Banished for probably a week.
Yeah, but it's about staving off.
Yeah.
You know, like, and that's, I think it's when you get, I mean, look, I've found that in my professional career doing lighting work, that sometimes it can be professionally invigorating to have access to new tools because it gives you different ways of doing things. And that, like, it's not, yes, you could probably do it with the stuff that you've currently got, and yes, it'll probably look similar, but sometimes it's nice to have the new tools and explore new ways of doing stuff.
Yeah.
Because you're still producing work, but it's like, it's not, I don't know, like a lot of the lighting that I do can be quite samey. Like you're aiming for the same look or the same feel, and it's like, well, how do we get there differently? And then it feels like you're sort of exercising a level of problem solving that you wouldn't get with the same stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like I said, you know I can stave off that feeling of gas by using something I have, but one of the big reasons gas exists, right, is that it does work in the sense it does make you feel better.
It does.
In some ways, in the short term, and then you know, the things that you talk yourself into around, like, well, now I can do X, Y, Z differently.
But will you actually do them?
Yeah.
It's the promise of opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, this new camera is going to allow me to take, you know, really
Finally.
shallow depth of focus portraits, and it's going to be perfectly in focus. But then it's like, do you actually make the time to find a model, find a time, arrange to meet up, take the photo? No, you just sit at home and go, oh, look at this. This could be it. Think of all the stuff you could do. And then, I mean, the way the cycle goes is that within 6 months, you probably haven't shot anything. Yeah. Or like, if you're that busy, or if you're not shooting anyway, if you're not in the habit of shooting.
It's a new camera, you don't know how it works. You forgot to take the dark slide out and you wasted a roll of film. And
Been
you're like,
there.
well, I'm burnt. I can't bring myself to go out again.
And then, you know, 6 months later, there's a new camera that's better again. And that's been my experience, is like, especially in lighting, every 6 months at the moment with LED, new LED tech, new stuff, new emitters, new color science, it's better, so much better. And then, you know, I've looked at work that I made 3 years ago and I'm like, that looks pretty good. You know, like, what did I have back then? You know, hope and a dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's also...
got some Neewer lights and reflectors. You know,
literally,
that's all
like,
right.
back then, it's more about the creative approach. But, yeah. I think I think all that stuff is definitely affected by the consumerist context we live in.
Yeah.
Like, capitalism is just a race to get your dollar. I interviewed a family friend years ago, and she said that, you know, in many aspects, her path through life was much more simple. You didn't have, you know, all these advertising marketing machines competing for your attention, competing for your dollar. She said that, you know, when she was 20, like, there was not much to spend your money on. It was like, you know, there was a bit of alcohol. You might go, she used to go to Cloudland. This was in like the 50s and 60s. But there wasn't 1,000 different potential hobbies or potential...
And you can just buy it immediately right now.
We're living in we're living in the best time ever of capitalism. It's like, you can buy stuff instantly. The next day it's here. The access to information around a product, or like pseudo reviews, you can convince yourself this is the one. So yeah, I thought that was a really interesting point.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about like the things with reviews and like social media things? Because there's definitely like a human heuristic, right? It's like a cognitive thing where if a crowd seems to believe in something, that means that you can sort of like outsource your critical thinking about it. Because like, oh, well, everyone else seems on board with this. So it means like every time you see a review of something, it's responded to positively or negatively, and you read comments, it's just like, wow, all these people say it's great. So it's like, so it therefore must be great. And for me, and I would fit in with this group of people were I to buy it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fraught. Like, most online reviewers are getting, you know, free product. They're getting early access. They're getting a privileged relationship to the manufacturer. And as much as they want to admit as much as they want to say that it doesn't cloud their ability to make an impartial review, I think that I've found is like a lot of, especially consumer product reviews, are so superficial. It's basically like, we'll just read out the spec sheet, we'll look at the camera and go, yeah, it's pretty well made, and then we'll do some test shots in like some pretty unchallenging lighting conditions. Oh yeah, it looks really nice. It's a good new offering from someone, you know, like if it fits in your workflow and your budget, maybe think about it. Like, but it doesn't really, they're not really digging. Like, they're not trying to uncover. And then on the other hand, you have guys that do like super techo reviews where they're like, complete every single pixel peak.
The video is 48 minutes long.
It's a long video. But again, there's like a different type of person that wants that review. Like, they want to be the guy who's like, well, actually, the pixel pitch in this camera is slightly smaller, and the signal to noise,
the native ISO,
it's better, and blah blah. And like, and that scratches their itch of like feeling like, well, I'm a technical photographer. I need to understand the technology. Like, the thing that I love about film, which is probably something that I shoot the most these days, is that the film stock, all the technology is in the film stock. You know, like that, the color science and the image is primarily in the chemicals, the photochemicals that Kodak has perfected, shall we say, over the last 80, 90, 100 years. The camera and the lens in front of it is just an ergonomic tool to get light onto the film. Whereas digital cameras, it's the whole post workflow. It's like, how does this camera interpret this color? How does it deal with this? How does it deal with that? So I think film cameras are an easy way to sort of get over that leap of like technical, well, that technical stress point. It's like, you don't need to have the newest thing. You can just get an old camera, put the film in it, and go.
Yeah. Maybe this is like just a me thing, but I'll talk about it and maybe you can relate. But something about film cameras specifically for me is I find it really easy to just fall down like a bit of a rabbit hole and talk myself into why something would be such a great idea. More than anything else for me, like, I start thinking about a film camera because I have like a couple. None of, you know, I know there's nothing wrong with any of them, but, you know, just none of them for me. So I need a new one kind of thing. And then I start, you know, thinking about what sort of camera I would want and like the way I'd like to shoot. And so I'm like, well, you know, just something that's a bit easy. So like, probably not an SLR because it'd be lighter. So now I'm thinking like a rangefinder kind of thing. And it's like, but you know, I don't necessarily have like Leica money. So like maybe just something like a Leica Minolta or like a Canon like 6 or something. And then you're like, yeah. And then you think about that and you're like, well, yeah, what focal length do I shoot? And then you're like, well, you know, I like about a 40 mil. So you're like, oh, well, now I'm thinking like an Olympus SP. 35,
I feel like, yeah, I know what you mean.
And you just talk yourself into it and then like 5 minutes later you're like, that's a great idea. How much is one of those on eBay?
Well, it's interesting because film cameras are effectively like a finished product.
Yeah.
Like, they're not making any more modern film cameras. So like, it's an easy research rabbit hole because it's like, well, these are all the ones that have ever existed and ever will exist. Which one of these fits my needs perfectly?
Yeah.
Do I want like something that's easy to handle and light, or do I want like blah, blah, blah? Anyway, this is getting very esoteric.
Yeah.
So maybe we shy away from film cameras.
But that a thing where it's like, I think about the camera which would fit my unique needs.
Yeah, because you are a unique creative.
Yeah,
you know?
that's right.
You're a special flower.
That's right.
And it's like, you don't need to have the cool camera to create the cool image.
Yeah.
But I think people associate it with that. They're like, I need to have this thing. I need this camera. Otherwise, I couldn't. I just couldn't shoot it. It wouldn't. It
couldn't be done.
But you could, you know.
Yeah.
The best camera
I need people to see me with it as well, to recognize how cool I am.
The best camera I own is a $40 point and shoot from Ukraine.
It was from you.
40 bucks.
Yeah, I don't know why.
It's
Ukraine
a fantastic camera. It's completely automatic. It's flash or no flash. You just press the button.
Yeah.
And it's a wide angle. It's reliable, cheap, takes AA batteries. It's all you need. Yeah. But anyway, what was our next topic? Have we explored gas enough? Any more? Well, maybe at the consumerist context. Like, do you think
we could talk about that some more?
Yeah.
Just like, people always like bidding for your time, attention, and money kind of thing.
Yes.
Because it's crazy how it's like an entire industry is not taking pictures. It's taking pictures with the camera you're trying to sell to people
so they can take pictures.
So they can take pictures.
Yeah, like
And it's lucrative. Like, you just look up camera review. Like, every fucking man and their dog's got, like...
everyone has an
done it.
opinion.
Yeah.
You know?
And, like, the number of channels out there with, like, 50 views or something. No offense, I probably get less views than that, so... I'm punching
we definitely
up currently.
did.
I'm punching up currently. It's fine.
It's okay.
But yeah, just the number of, like, people who are just trying their hand at it, trying to, like, get into that industry.
Yeah. Every now and then you'll find a reviewer who will stress the point that, like, cameras are so good right now that it really doesn't matter what you buy. And I think that's quite valuable. Because, like, you look at modern offerings and they're all fantastic. Like, even if you look at offerings from 10 years ago, you know, they've got their own look, their own vibe.
Yeah.
You go back 20 years, it's like early sort of CCD stuff. Beautiful. You know, go back 10 years before that, you got like the last era of of film, like when film was sort of at its zenith. Like, every era has an option. But we are conditioned and told, well, advertised to, that this is it. This will solve all your problems.
Which you bought the model before this?
Yeah,
Pathetic.
that's useless now.
Yeah, completely obsolete.
That's happened to me in lighting. Like, I bought some lights a couple of years back, and there's now new units on the market that are twice as bright for half the price. And it's like, well, it doesn't make my lights worthless. It just means if I was to buy more lights, I would probably think about other options. But you can only, and that's the thing, you can only make a decision based on what is available to you at the time. But don't worry, in 6 months there'll be something else. So, yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of crazy. Like, yeah, the consumerism part of it, and as well as, like, not just the cameras themselves, right? There's the whole, like, all the paraphernalia, like
The
tripods,
accessories, the stuff.
all that's just the stuff, and like, yeah, how it is in a lot of ways, yeah, like, marketed to be like, you know, for your unique individual needs kind of thing. And, you know,
And of course, that company sells 15 different cameras to every unique individual need.
Yeah.
It's not like we're just targeting one small section of the market. It is everyone. We have a product for everyone. Like, Fujifilm's been really successful in sort of that retro physical controls, the experience of shooting, like space. And then Canon's always been like, I don't know, like the more professional, high tech, like high megapixel, and then Nikon's been that sort of legacy DSLR line, and then Sony's the newcomer, like we're mirrorless, you know, digital. So, you know, the horses for courses.
yeah, but yeah, it's just like the insane amount of, like, yeah, things just being sold to you all the time. And yeah, I mean, and on top of going back to gas, that is probably like another big thing which helps me talk myself out of it. Where it's just that realization where it's like, as soon as I start thinking about buying it, I'm just trying to remind myself, it's like, you've been conned. They've scammed you into believing you need to buy it.
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything is some level of scam.
Yeah.
It is ridiculous. The amount of, I mean, we're now in the attention economy. So it's not just a product, it's your time. You know, like, how can we effectively get you on our platform for as long as possible? I feel like that's pretty common knowledge at this stage. Like, everyone is sort of aware that social media and other apps are trying to keep you on their platform to serve you more ads or to serve you more, you know, algorithmic content. So they can say, well, our average user uses our platform for 82 minutes a day, and we can sell more ads to our, you know, ad partners and blah blah blah. It's just a bit of a Anyway, digital detox. We need to start thinking about.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
back.
let's stay on topic of digital. Sorry, not digital. Attention economy, because that is probably actually a good bridge into, like, the role of modern day sort of government.
Yes.
So, man, but I mean, a lot of people would fundamentally disagree with the need for government at all. I don't think you could do that in particularly good faith.
Look, I think when governments fail, or when government services start feeling like they're inefficient, that's when you get the murmurs of, like, what even is government for?
Yeah. So when you get, like,
what do they do?
Yeah. So when you have, like, a government which is, like, corrupt.
Exactly. When the services they are meant to provide are not provided, or are provided to a poor standard, things start to fall apart. So I think I read recently about, like, the socialism as a concept. Well, maybe let's back away from that. But so post World War II, the American government realized they were going to have hundreds of thousands of soldiers coming home, and they needed to look after them because there'd been a sort of social contract there, which we went to war, we fought for America, and every nation really had people that went away and fought. We fought for our country, we come back, and there's an expectation, right? We want jobs, we want somewhere to live, and we want like a stable life, stability. And the American government subsidized so many industries post World War II. Manufacturing, like the manufacturing industry in America was primarily built off the manufacturing capacity they had built during the war to supply the war effort. So you came home and, oh, we've got a factory job for you, you know. Here's a like nice plot of land in the country.
Yeah.
You know? And there was a commitment there to those people. And I think in the last probably 70 years, the commitment that government has made to its citizens seems to be getting less. I feel like the commitment that a government would make to you, you know, you'll be looked after, you'll have access to opportunity, be that through hard work or otherwise, that social contract I think is falling apart. And that's where people start getting disenchanted with government.
Yeah, because, so on the topic of like social contract, it's interesting because social contract is definitely like a cultural thing. So between societies and countries, you know, social contracts will be different. Like, you know, even, you know, you roll back like 30 years, even though people in a country might want certain things like as a part of it. So the classic example would be something like the United States not having public health care. It's all like private there. So that's like a cultural thing where, you know, just like getting a free doctor's visit or like free emergency healthcare, not part of the social contract. Whereas like somewhere like Australia, or like somewhere in Scandinavia, it'd be like, that is absolutely a part of the social contract. It's like, I work here, I live here, I like have a family here.
And that's a great example of what government, I think, should be doing.
Yeah.
Like in industries where, or in markets where, if let run amok with private money and equity and whatnot, it would be simply too cost ineffective to provide that service. I think that's where government needs to step in. And healthcare is a great example because healthcare is not, especially in Australia, healthcare is not a profit-making endeavour. Like you just spend money. And that's the cost of universal healthcare. It's a money pit. But at the same time, I think it's the greatest safety net Australia has.
Yeah. And it's also, you want to talk about like how much money it costs to operate, but you don't talk about like, you know, something which isn't mentioned as much as it should be is how much it costs to not operate, in terms of like, oh, well, you know, someone has a health condition and instead of, you know, so even in Australia with our current system, there is still a whole bunch of issues around like people not seeking care when like as they should, and then present instead of something getting picked up at the GP because the GP costs $80 and they don't have time to go. It like sort of ferments and then it becomes like a chronic issue or more of an acute issue, and then they present to a hospital, which is much more expensive than to be called out. So, you know, all of that sort of put aside, if you didn't have that and now all of a sudden you have like someone with like a terminal health issue that they can't get treated for, and their family then has to take time out of work, and then the person,
The economic costs.
it's like broader than that is like much greater than if you just actually take care of the person through public healthcare. But so I mean, let's roll it back a little bit more. So role of government. So something which is like a frame that I like to like think about. So we live in a world where like so government has the monopoly on violence, right? That is kind of like a foundational part of like what is a government. And if you sort of read a bit of your history, you'll start to read some sort of like things like Thomas Hobbes. I don't know if you've read the Leviathan, State of War. Yeah, so he sort of talks a little bit about what is kind of like the state of nature of man. So like pre-civilization, how did people kind of operate? And sort of the way he presents it is kind of, you know, if there's nothing to protect you from anyone else in terms of like a social contract, it's just like, well, then it's a state of war. You know, someone has something you want, like you'll either like try to just take it from them by force, or when they eventually go to sleep, you just kill them in their sleep and take it then. So it's a state of war. And so what Thomas Hobbes sort of prescribes as kind of like the government is what he calls like the Leviathan, which is government. And when he wrote, that was like 15 or 1600s, kind of, I mean, we would call that sort of government pretty heavy-handed in terms of like human rights, not so much a thing. Depends who your family is kind of the human
Are
rights.
you part of the aristocracy?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was still pretty feudalistic. It was sort of like burgeoning as to, you had like the emergence of capitalism at that time, like a merchant class. But yeah, if we looked at it, we'd be like, wow, that is like not somewhere I want to live. And so his thing at that time was kind of like, well, as much as the government might be cruel and like step on people and everything else, it's immeasurably better than
Everyone stepping on everyone.
than it just being a state of nature and it just being like a state of war.
Yeah, that's not something I considered, but continue.
And so, you take that perspective of like, historically, just some kind of organization to keep things sort of going and provide some rough structure for like the world to kind of work. I mean, that's a very charitable interpretation because, I mean, the truth of it is, right, that throughout history, governments were operated by people with power and influence to further extend their power and influence. And they put a veneer of like whatever they needed to do to get most people to sign on to it. But, you start looking at the modern time kind of thing where, we have like industrialized farming. Like, there's enough food to feed everyone. So it's like, okay, we think about what do people need fundamentally? It's like, well, they need food, check, industrialized farming, water. Yeah, we can make enough of that if the AI doesn't drink it all. So check. I mean, what else do they need?
Shelter.
Shelter. I mean, we can feasibly build
House
homes.
everyone.
House everyone. I mean, and that's sort of where we might start to get into like the role of modern government because currently, well, actually, we won't get into it right now, but housing.
Yeah.
Technically, yes, we can do that, and most people have it. And if you compare that to most of humanity, I mean, this is maybe a controversial take, but living under a bridge probably better than the plains of the the savannah. So, like comparatively through history, and like I'm reading a book at the moment by Barbara Tuchman, The Calamitous 14th Century, and she talks about how peasants basically lived, which would be in like basically a flea-infested shack with one bed that like 10 people would sleep in. And that was how a lot of people lived for most of time.
Yeah, it's a good point. Like, we live in especially in the first world, we live in an environment where everyone has, I think, their basic needs met.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not everyone. Like I think that speaks to our privilege, but a lot of people,
vast proportion. Anyway,
a large percentage.
Yeah. So we start to then think about like, modern government. What is its kind of role there, right? Because for each of those three, I mean, I won't get into the fourth thing, which is like people's drive to like procreate and stuff, or like the urge to. That was the previous episode. Anyway, but if we get into like the food thing, like I mean, let's maybe just work through those. Housing's probably like the spiciest one, but so we'll talk about food first. So you have everyone can sort of eat. Fundamentally, it's kind of a scam in terms of how you need to have a job to be able to afford to eat.
Well, what is government's role in the food supply, right? So you've got modern farming. So in Australia, I think we are a net exporter of food. I think we grow more than we need. So we export a lot of beef, we export a lot of stuff. But Australia has one of the most efficient farming structures in the world. Did we touch on this last time? So Australia's farming industry is like one of the least subsidised farming industries in the world because we're quite effective and we're pretty efficient. We know what we're doing. And we got good fertile lands, a lot of volcanic soil. I mean, sort of a hangover from the Aboriginal land management of the 50,000 years before we got here. Very fertile, a lot of natural water, that kind of stuff. So we always had the tools to provide food for our citizens. So interestingly, I don't think the government has ever been involved directly in the food supply in Australia. Like that's always been externalised to capitalist markets. We will grow the wheat, we will sell the wheat, that will make the flour, and the market has sort of determined the cost of that good, and then that's been spread around, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. But like, the role of government is for some countries, yes, their government does subsidize food production.
America,
but,
hugely
yes,
subsidized food production industry.
but it gets itself involved in like other places, right? So it's sort of like
Environmental regulation.
correct. So it's on the regulation side of things
Yeah,
where
right.
the government finds itself involved.
And that is, I think, important.
yeah. So I mean, something that could be, this feels like a bit of a tangent, but it will be
It's still
deeply
related
connected to
Government.
what we're talking about is like, so, how do I approach it? So, capitalism, which is what our government sort of regulates, only sort of works in a situation where there is competition, effectively. That is what capitalism thrives on. It's like, because then people compete against each other, they try to innovate, and iron sharpens iron sort of thing. And as a consumer, ultimately you get like the greatest benefits. So like something which a lot of people who are anti-regulation talk about is like, well, I can't really, regulation stifles capitalism because, well, I can't create my own product because the regulation is too difficult to deal with. So as a result, you just get like,
I can't use the really good
Yeah.
fertilizer because the government says it gives you cancer.
yeah, yeah.
Boy, your broccoli
Yeah.
would be so
but,
cheap.
But it goes to like other stuff where it's like, well, I can't open a farm because like when in our harvest season we need to work 18 hours a day or something, and like
the maximum allowed.
and the
yeah.
EBA for like those people is blah blah blah. So
Yeah.
so like all that stuff is like kind of like true, and yeah, the role of modern government to me feels like it should be mediating that kind of stuff, because you don't want to over-regulate, which can be the temptation. And it's interesting because it can be the temptation from, we take the work example, people who are very pro-labor, labor as in O-U-R, who are
Pro-worker.
like, very pro-worker, who are like, the rights of the workers must be blind. And if an employer can't meet their obligations, then it shouldn't exist. Certainly an argument to be made there.
Well, that's a very good point. But continue.
And so they get support from there because like, well, you know what? If you can't operate your farm in a way which takes care of the people who work there, all 365 days a year, then you shouldn't operate. And then you also get, people who maybe they own a farm with automation and they don't need people to work there 18 hours a day. Maybe they can just work 8 because they've been successful enough over time, and they've been successful enough over the time to have enough money to pay for the upfront capital cost of some automation manufacturing
that
stuff.
raises a bigger question, right? And that question is, how much money does a business have to make for it to be in business, right?
Yeah.
If you've got $1 billion company and you're making $2 profit a year, but you're paying the wages of, 10,000 people, or,
Yeah.
I don't know, a lot of people,
Yeah.
and the business provides a service to the community, at what point does the business owner go, that's a lot of work for $2? Like I'm taking a wage, but like I'm only making $2 gross profit at the end of all this hard work. And it's sort of a hypothetical, but like that's when I think government gets involved in private industry. So if you've got, and that's what's happening, that happens all the time in Australia. Like the most recent Glencore thing up in mining country, like they've got a smelter up there. They're going to get $600 million over 3 years for like 600 jobs, right? It's $1 million a job. So it's 330 grand a year.
Just pay the people.
Just
$1 million
pay them
bucks.
directly.
Yeah.
And then in 3 years' time, we're going to do it all over again. They're going to say,
Yeah.
we're going to close down. And the government's going to go, how much is it going to cost? Why don't you just say $200 million a year right now? And that's when I think when private industry fails and it's like, it's just too cost prohibitive to continue the business. But also we employ so many people. So, and then that's where government is in a bit of a squeeze, because it's like, well, we want to support these people directly, but we're not that socialist that we're just going to pay them directly.
Yeah.
So you sort of have to pay them through the capitalist market,
Yeah,
and then it
but
becomes
you
direct
don't.
subsidy.
Yeah.
And it's like, you don't actually have to do that.
Yeah.
But we seemingly are reluctant to admit that businesses, even though they're not failing, they're just not making a perceived level of profit that their owner wants them to make. And then suddenly it's like, we need a handout. And this happens all the time. And that's where I think government needs to say, right, well, fair enough, you've fucked it.
Yeah.
You've failed to manage your business.
You had a crack, you had a go.
You had a good go, but we're going to take over.
Yeah.
And then the argument is, well, everything government does costs 2 times as much as private industry. And it's like, That might have been true once, but I think in the last 20 years, like rise of consultancy, rise of every industry attached to government has deprived government of the skills required to provide those services at an adequate cost.
Yeah.
So there's a longer term question there about should government retrain and bring things in-house. I'm of the opinion that they should, but the market or the advocates for the market as a concept will always argue that no, it's more efficient to let that go to market. They'll compete, blah, blah, blah. But I think that's bullshit because you've got 4 consultancies in Australia that all compete against each other and they all sort of know that there's a price floor. They're like, we're not going to go below, say, $1 million for this contract. And if someone else goes up to 1.2, that's great. We'll get it for $1 million, even when we might have been able to do the job for 500. So they're still going to make money. The service will get provided, but at cost. And then it's like, well, that's a productivity nightmare because the government is just handing money out. Like, all money the government spends is money that is created, right? Any government spending is created money. It's not like they have a bank account that they pull money out of and then we put some back in.
Yeah.
Anytime the government spends money, it is producing money.
Yeah.
It is making money out of nothing.
Yeah. My understanding of that, I mean, so on the money front, before I talk about some of the other things I liked you said, is like, so when they spend money, they create money. When you pay them tax, they effectively destroy that money. It's not like it goes into their piggy bank for them to draw out later. It's like, oh, thanks for the tax money. It doesn't exist anymore.
No,
and maybe I've misconceptualized that.
That's how I think it. That's how I think it works. Please, get in touch if we're completely wrong.
Jim Chalmers.
Yeah, if you're watching, I really hope you aren't.
Yeah,
bigger things, bigger fish to fry, my brother.
Cool. So one of the things that I find interesting about what you spoke about is a lot of capability which might have previously existed in at least the Australian government has been kind of lost, right? And that can be, I mean, has Australia ever had a state-capable construction
private industry?
Yeah, like a builder.
I think
is that a bad example?
Or I think the federal government has built homes previously.
Yeah, so that, mate. Let's stick with that example. I mean, I'm not familiar with the intricacies of that, but I'm going to be speaking in conceptual stuff, so that's fine.
I can say whatever I want.
Yeah, so I'm not drawing on actual examples, but so let's say yes, you have a government body who operates and does something, and then let's say let's say they build homes, and they can build a home for let's say $100,000. Let's say then there's a change of government, for example, and the people who have now taken government. I mean, they've kind of been whoever pays for their marketing bills and what their vested interests are consultancy groups or elsewise. So they're like, we know what we're gonna rejig this government department which builds homes, and we're gonna because the government's inefficient. So now we're gonna do some of that work privately because they can do it better, kind of thing. And so they do that. Now all of a sudden, once you factor in the consultancy and stuff, now costs more money to build a home. And the marketing slant on that and the communication slant on that isn't that, oh, we changed how this thing works, how this department works, and now it's worse. It's oh, it's just worse. So it's well, why would we give them money? It costs this much money to operate a year. And so then, then they make it even worse. They draw even more resources out of it, and then it becomes even less efficient, even more expensive. And then that just becomes a feedback loop. And you see that in services like Centrelink, right? Where it's oh, it's so expensive to run, blah, blah, blah. We're going to take things out of it, and we're not going to fund as much stuff. And then it gets worse as a service to use.
Well, the thing you have to remember is that these are social services.
Yes.
They're not social.
But people don't think about it. People
they
think,
don't.
Yeah, people conceptualize, and there's definitely been a push by vested interests to make you think of governments operating in the way that a business should.
And it's not a business.
Where it's a profit, the whole the idea of a profit and loss inside a socialized.
No.
So it's just these are people.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
But it's also
profit.
The government as an employer,
Yeah.
federal, state, and local, they're the biggest employer in Australia.
Yeah.
Right? They employ more people. I don't think everyone else combined, but they employ a significant percentage of people, and they need. What am I trying to say? The services that those people administer do not have to be perfectly cost competitive because a lot of those services are not services that private industry would take up.
Yeah.
socializing those privatizing those services, which we see like government after government do to reduce a perceived balance sheet to like we can't, this is a liability. Like just the notion of thinking about a public service as a liability is, I think, backwards thinking. But when so many treasurers have, especially Liberal treasurers, have drilled the idea into the Australian public that, you know, this is like your household budget. You can't be in the black. Actually, you can. You can be in the black for pretty much as long as you want because you have such insane amounts of tax revenue that you can service pretty much any debt.
Yeah.
Yes,
and it also depends
term,
on where you're targeting.
Yeah,
your
long
debt.
term.
It's just
like
no, we can't afford this. What's your corporate tax rate?
Well,
what are your tax breaks for like investment homes?
I think,
that's good for the industry.
I think we might have strayed away from like the role of government.
Yes.
So what, like in my mind, the role of government is to provide services and to provide products that private industry is not willing to provide.
Yeah. So on the
and typically that's so like broad strokes, that's national defence, because you cannot privatise national defence. That's a fucking nightmare. So you're going to pay twice as much for national defence, but hey, at least it's national. And it's not some bloke who you're saying, well, can you please bring in the helicopters? Nah, mate, they're actually mine. And now I run
my country.
Now I run Australia. Health, I think health has to be publicly owned because, I mean, you've seen how it goes in other countries where they have privatised healthcare. It's just not an effective model. It makes a lot of money.
It's pretty inhumane, really.
Yeah, because like everyone gets sick at some stage, you know, like it might be not a big sickness or a big illness, but everyone gets sick. So there's like an inherent demand for that service.
If you don't get treated, probably gets worse.
Yeah, it's going to cost you this much if you want to keep living. And guess what? We're all trying to stay alive.
Yep.
And then sort of trickling down from that, you have like, I think that sort of every essential service should be public. So I'm talking electricity, water, all those kind of things. And in Australia, there's sort of a flexi model of like, I think internet should be publicly owned. Like, I think all those networks that everyone has to use should be publicly owned. And they were like initially, water's still public. Electricity is getting more and more privatized. Internet and telephone is entirely privatized these days. But it's like, for instance, in Australia, Telstra, we paid for that. So we paid for that. The taxpayer paid for that service to be instituted, and then it was sold off, right? Anyway.
So, mate, Telstra, thank you for bringing that up. So,
what a great
so you spoke about treasurers before and like how they're talking about a
household
budgets
budget
and that kind of thing. So, one of Australia's great treasurers, Mr. Paul Keating. So he and under Bob Hawke, together they privatised the Commonwealth Bank. And so in the lead up to that sort of decision, there's kind of 4 pillars of it that made him be like, you know what, fuck it, we can't, not fuck it, but we're going to do it. It is appropriate to privatise this thing. And so there's 4 things that they sort of worked through, like, okay, if it meets these, it's like, it's an okay service to privatise. So one of them is it can't be a monopoly. If something is a public monopoly and then you privatise it, the only thing worse than a public monopoly is a private monopoly. Because it means whoever owns it now is like, well, we're the only fucking show in town, mate. So we are...
Prices are going up.
And what are you going to do about it?
Oh, you want some water?
Yes.
Ah, well,
Yes.
we got the pipes.
Yes. So within the context of Australia at the time, the Hawke government had opened Australia to foreign banks. So there was now more competition going on. So all of a sudden, like, there was no longer as much of a monopoly. Or they had less market power. So they were like, okay, check. Not a monopoly. B, could public money be spent better elsewhere? Again, we look at, there's more competition going on. There was actually like a credit surge at the time. So there was like basically a lot of competition in banks operating. So it's like, well, we kind of don't need to be spending the money here because private industry can sort of take over it. Check. The third one, which relates a lot to health, is would privatizing this create a perverse incentive? And so that is something like, let's use the health example, where like, yes, you privatize healthcare and it's like, well, you're in here, you're really sick and in pain, you're fucking desperate. So I've just decided...
It's going to cost you.
Panadol for you, more expensive. Why? Because I can.
That's a good, yeah, that's a good point.
So perverse incentives for privatizing something is the one, and one of the really big ones. And then the fourth one is, if government vacated providing this service, would a private institution step up and do it? And so that's something like, if we talk about Telstra, a private company, if they'd privatized Telstra, probably wouldn't do it. Because Telstra, yes, provided service to a lot of metropolitan areas, but it also provided services to people in the middle of the fucking bush, which are very expensive to operate. And the services they provide in the metro areas basically subsidized what they provided out in the bush. And so that was one reason why their government didn't privatize Telstra, was because, like, well,
It's going to affect...
it fails the monopoly test. B, no, government really shouldn't be spending its money elsewhere because this is like, people need it.
It's an essential service.
Yes. C, the perverse incentive, like, you're in the bush, you're desperate, and you need money. Sorry, you need to be able to call. Yeah. Well, fuck it, we're gonna launch it. And then D, which is the, would a private company step up to it? It's like, maybe not, because, maybe that phone line in the bush, maybe like gets struck by lightning or something.
Yeah,
and now
absolutely.
And now they're like, oh, well, now we've got to send a tech 8 hours somewhere to fix a phone line for someone who pays
and look at the position
$20 a month.
Look at the position we're in now with Telstra.
Terrible. It's atrocious.
And that's, I think, because the next government decided, well, we can write this down.
Howard.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But, and that's where I think, I don't really understand the liberal ideology of trying to sell services. Like, it is such a short-term gain. Like, it does not... To me, it feels like there's a level of corruption there. Like, it just does not feel like rationally you could look at this and think, well, if we sell it now, everything's going to get cheaper and it's going to... Like, do you actually believe that? Like, as a liberal politician, do you actually believe that if we sell this service, is it going to get cheaper and better, and it's going to maintain its level of service in the future? I don't think so.
So my understanding of that and how they rationalize it to themselves is they know that the service will probably get worse, but they sort of probably think that it costs so much money because they just have basically a very dim view of public servants. And they're like, everyone working there is just taking the fucking piss kind of thing. And it's just a complete waste of money, like, paying these people to do it. So, like, we'll privatize it and there'll be some hiccups and some bumps in the road. But if we make it a private company, then they'll get rid of all that dead wood in there, and then it'll be, like, better after that. And that, I mean, I think that's how they rationalize it and how they conceptualize it as an issue.
Yeah, I don't believe it. I think, like, okay, first of all, where are you going to find these miraculously better workers? Like, you're still drawing from the same labour pool. It's not like there's 50,000 people that are just
they just think they don't fundamentally need them in a lot of ways.
But these are services.
And they think about, if it's a private company, then they're not beholden to doing, like, fulfilling every checkbox that a government-owned thing needs to do. So they can get rid of some of the dead services that aren't really used by that many people, kind of thing. And if you're one of those people who needs that, then fuck you. This is the free market, baby.
Those are the most important fringes. The fringes of our society are the hardest parts and the most expensive parts to cater for.
Yeah.
But they're the parts which I think pay the most benefits.
Yeah.
Like,
and that gets you into a conversation again of social contract.
Yeah. How do you provide for people? I mean, so my father, he's a big proponent of his sort of... I think you can distill his political ideology down to, like, one sentence, and it's like, if people can't look after themselves, we'll look after you. And that's his whole approach to government, right? I think he's sort of drank the Kool-Aid a bit on, like, privatization and, like, could be more effective here or there, but, like, broad strokes, if you can't look after yourself, we'll give you a hand, And I think that's a really noble way to look at what government needs to do. It's like, okay, you might be down on your luck, we'll give you a hand, i.e. social services, Medicare, that kind of stuff. You've hurt yourself, we'll give you a hand, You live in the bush, if it was, a privately owned phone line, it's going to cost you $1,000 a month. Well, with Telstra, it's 30, so we'll give you a hand. Like, same with water, rubbish, blah, blah, blah. Like, all those things that sort of keep our society functioning, we'll give you a hand. Because otherwise, no one would live remote. no one would live regionally. No one would live. You would all be clustered into these micro efficiency dwellings where it's like, well, it's one bin for everyone. Like, you know, like it's one shared phone line because it's just everyone. It's more efficient. And yes, there are efficiencies to density and that kind of stuff, but that's sort of. I mean, we're sort of trending towards like what is the Australian identity? Like, I think Australia's always had that sort of dispersed.
How do you
community.
want to live?
Exactly. How do you want to live? Like, no, not everyone wants to live in a city. Like, some people like regional life, but. And this is why we're seeing the rise of like regionally focused politicians, because the regions have been neglected. And I think a lot of it is due to privatisation, because companies have decided that it is just simply too expensive to provide that service in your area. It's like, you can live there as much as you want. You're just not going to have good internet, or you're not going to have access to good healthcare. You might have a hospital, but boy, you're going to be coming to Brisbane, you know, if something serious ever happens.
Yeah.
Like, health's a huge one. Like, I think we really missed the boat on the internet and sort of distributed healthcare. Like, if we had had a wide-reaching fibre network in Australia, you could really administer those services remotely with proper internet. And we've missed the boat, I think, in a lot of regional communities where they're on, like, you know, a fixed wireless network where you can't barely do a video call. I'd like to see more investment in that area, but. Yeah, I think government should look after people. Like, they are a safety net. And I think a lot of people are unwilling to admit that that's what government should do. They think that government is just sort of something that exists. I honestly struggle to think what do they think government does?
Yeah, like, so I think if you spoke to a lot of people, they would agree that yes, government should take care of people. I think what people who are skeptical of the implementation of that,
it's going to cost too much? Is that the concern?
That, and then there's some amount of, people just rorted it. They'll just bludge off it, kind of thing.
And they will. Yeah. There's always an element of that. And that, I think, is part and parcel of any social program. You're always going to get some dickhead. In Australia, we got dole bludgers. Like, they're dole bludgers. They exist, you know. But I think, and that's where social cohesion comes into it. It's like, you need to have there needs to be an understanding that generally most people are decent people, and when you have division and disunity in a community, it's like, well, fucking so-and-so, they're definitely rorting the system. Or like, and I think that, I mean, dole bludgers have been a complaint ever since the dole was invented.
Yeah.
You know, like,
yeah.
And yes, some people, my big thing about the dole is like, okay, so you want to be a dole bludger, all right? What are you on? You know, it is not a lot of money.
Yeah.
Like, you're not rolling in it. You're not like, you're not shacked up in some mansion.
I think it's because like let's go back to like a social contract thing. For example, my 2 cents on people who are dole bludgers sort of go into that position because through their life, they have fundamentally had a lack of opportunity to do something else, you know, because we started this talking about gas and like status and identity and that kind of thing. Mate, like, there is no status and it's not a particularly enviable identity to be a dole bludger, right? It's sort of like something that you do, and it's how you operate because through your life you've had negative experiences with probably authority, limited access to like opportunity, and so you're like, you know, there might be some personal rationalization of like, well, you know, I'm doing this because I'm getting my comeuppance against XYZ that happened to me. And, you know, and if that's happened to you, I'm really sorry that you've had those negative experiences. But I think people do it when they feel like, yeah, there is no opportunity and a sense of social contract does feel broken to them.
Totally. And I think that's where government needs to step in again.
Yeah,
and
to be like,
provide opportunity.
Yeah,
provide access.
Yeah, instead of just being like, have you applied for 6 jobs this month?
You know, like,
most like what a terrible measure. It's just like, okay, well, you know, have you thought about what skills you have to like market and like find something which, and you know, let's not turn this into like a neoliberal like you must be producing shareholder value to like operate and stuff. But it's like, you know, how not even making money for a company. It's like, how do you providing for the people you love, sort of thing. And there's obviously economic ways to do that.
Speaking to that language, like, I've got a friend with a deeply disabled daughter, And when the NDIS came through, they had to sort of reassess all their care needs. And one of the lines in the assessment pack was like, will your daughter ever be a functional, will your daughter ever be an economically functional unit? That was the language. It was like,
Whoa.
no, man, she's got a genetic disorder. She is never going to contribute economically to this country. Like, it's like, what fucking world do we live in? Like, that's not, some people are never going to contribute economically, you know? Some people are disabled, or some people are not in a position where they can contribute. And that's okay. Like, the neoliberal thing is like, fuck, if you're not, you don't deserve to live. You know what I mean?
It's a
like,
eugenics rebrand.
totally. Like, that is, if you're not contributing, if you're not, that's the end. Like, and I think that's crap. Because, like, it's not about how you care for the people that are contributing. They'll look after themselves, you know? It's how you look after the people that can't do anything.
Yeah.
You know, like, how do you care for them? How do you give them a quality of life? And that's where that's where I want my tax dollars to go. And that's where they do go. Like, social programs are like 30% of the Australian budget.
Yep.
So much money. Well, I mean, that includes the pension.
Yeah.
And blah, blah, blah. But
Yeah, so I mean that's interesting we're talking about there. So like again, let's circle back to just like we won't get into specific, but the notion of like a social contract. So I think a lot of people nowadays, I mean, satisfaction with democracy has been decreasing for decades at this point. And I mean, my personal belief is that's because, people have a sense that their social contract is broken. Like, they're perceiving their lives getting worse. And, back to the first episode, that is both real and perceived. It is unarguably worse in real terms, their relative quality of life to other people in society. But then their perceived quality of life is also worse because they have Dan Bilzerian or someone on their phone and they're like, man, this guy's got a Bugatti and I have fucking Honda Accord. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so there's that part of it. And so I think when people, they have a sense of the social contract broken, they see government spending money on stuff, they don't feel like their lives getting better. And then they see money being spent elsewhere on people. And there's like not a completely unjustifiable sense of like, why not me kind of thing. And it's really hard to like empathize with people who you don't know and aren't in your like in group and in unit when your life doesn't feel like it's everything you want it to be. And you see other people getting what you perceive as like a handout. And I think having a social contract is what allows people to resolve that tension internally. That's what allows, if you have a sense of like, that I have peers in this country who are like, solidarity, where like Australians look after each other, it's like we care about some of the same things, we like fight for each other, we like love this country and have like a shared sense of like community. That's what allows like that to be okay. And while that doesn't exist and people don't feel enfranchised in their society,
you get problems.
Yeah.
You get things start falling apart. And that's where I think that is the role of government, is to support those in need. And in all, like, I think in Australia it's housing as well. Like, if you can't feel like you can afford a house, why do I want to participate? Well, I can't even get a leg up. Like, I can't start my life. I can't blah, blah, blah. Can't feel secure. So much of that is like, governments could aid in that need, but it's like, well, they don't want that. Like, and then the argument becomes, well, they don't want to. They don't want to. And it's like, well, no, like, it's maybe not that they want to or don't want to, but it's like there are other economic things they've got to spend that money on, and like trying to break down a budget as a like, how God knows how you actually sit down and you break down a budget for a country. Like, how do you actually, what moral weight do you put in different categories? Like, maybe getting some giant ally is forcing you to spend money on something, so you feel like you have to spend money on that, and then, but our social programs need more money. But we've got, the youth crisis, we've got crime, we've got health. Like, I've got an aging population. What a fucking nightmare. Like, seriously. Like, what a nightmare.
Yeah.
Like, how do you actually make choices and also make electable choices?
Yeah.
Because you're an elected official. Like, your government is elected. You can't just go, houses for everyone.
You could have a plan that would 100% work,
Yeah.
But if you can't get elected to do it, it's not going to happen. So then you have to, then there's a game of presenting what your actual policy positions are in a certain way to be appealing.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of that, you might have to change or compromise on certain things to actually be elected. And that's probably has a non-zero amount to do with, as I said, the dissatisfaction with democracy.
So the thing, some video from some bloke at the Australia Institute, he said that if the rational answer to all our problems was in between Labor and Liberal, we would find it, right? But the answer is radical. It's outside those centrist organisations. So anytime you get a piece of research or a piece of something contrary to what they ideologically want to accept, it is considered radical. It is outside the bounds of their...
The Overton window.
Yeah, their ideological perspective.
What Overton window
there
is.
you go.
Yeah.
So, and then it's like, well, we simply cannot do that. That is so radically outside what we would ever accept as a possible solution that it becomes impossible. And that's the problem with the challenges that we face, is that I think a lot of them have become so... You need radical solutions to these questions, and it's like, well,
yeah. And the longer you wait, the more radical the solution.
They have to get the problem gets bigger, the solution gets bigger, and then it becomes like, are we staring down the barrel of like a UBI? Like that's what the way AI is going to go. I reckon is like if AI really does disenfranchise or free up large swathes of the workforce, we're looking at a UBI. Like you're looking at a UBI and you're looking at a UBI quick, because otherwise things get bad. Like. No one's got any jobs. They reckon like every society is 3 days away from like...
Yeah, three missed meals.
3 missed meals away from like a fucking breakdown. Yeah. I believe it. I think people should be more willing to fight for their, for their economic future. But I think people are so caught up in like their day-to-day, and that is that's the whole the day-to-day, the oppressive struggle of just living and fucking putting food on the table. You're sort of unwilling, not unwilling, but like you're just tired.
You don't have
you're
the
busy.
Air.
Exactly. You can't take a breath. You just got to keep plugging away. And I think people, maybe not governments. I think if governments expected that, it's pretty insidious. But yeah, it's hard to sort of foment that ground level change. Now we're getting into this, radicalization and unionization and like the collective. Anyway, that's a topic for another time.
Yeah, but yeah, broadly speaking, role of government. I mean, I don't think we didn't cover like a lot of it. We like touched on some things like, how regulation impacts people's ability or capitalism's ability to actually function. And there's certainly like a lot to talk about there, because I mean, I had this discussion with people at work. Oh man, I'm getting into a tangent now again immediately. But
you work in government,
Yeah.
Is this a conflict of interest?
No, not from going to talk about. But like, so the example I use. So I spoke about capitalism thrives on competition and innovation and that kind of thing. But like, as technology has developed and as more regulation sort of comes into play, like it stifles your ability to do that. So say, for example, I see cars out there. I'm like, man, these cars are so expensive. I reckon I can import some shit from China and weld up a car for 10 grand. I'm going to buy some cheap batteries, some cheap electric motors, some wheels that are readily available, already produced. Just going to MIG it up, and then we're on the road. We're good to go. Australian government's like, hold up, buddy. What the do you have seatbelts? Do you have airbags? Like,
ANCAP? Did you get tested?
Yeah.
Do you have a safety rating?
Are your lights at the right height? Are they bright enough? All that kind
Not too bright.
All that regulation, which exists for very good reason, makes it hard to actually produce a product it introduces difficulties to be able to compete. And you can translate that onto any other technology you want, kind of thing, right? It's just like, well, I want to make TVs. I'm just like, well, I need to own something which makes an LED panel. Huge, and anything with like a large capital outlay necessarily precludes competition because who the fuck has all that capital available to do it?
I think
not your average dick and job, but back when it was like, I'm a carriage maker. I just need some trees and some lathes and some other bits and bobs.
And a dream, baby.
Yeah, and you can build it. And you can make that.
I guess
Or,
that's a function of economies as they get more complex.
Yes.
Like, look at the information economy and look at the digital economy. Like, you're not going to compete broadly with, like, NVIDIA.
No.
In a
I'm
decade.
making GPUs now.
in a decade.
Yeah,
You know, like, or even 2 decades.
Yeah.
Like, and the competitive advantage they have, blah, 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 first to market.
Well, yeah, that's like
Whatever.
TMC though as well, because it's like,
Transistors, insane. Like, it's, lithography, don't even get me started. ASML, blah, blah, blah. But I think those broader, like, if you're in an industry where it is so cost competitive to actually achieve a competitive, or to enter that market and compete, then regulate it. Because you're effectively approaching a monopoly status.
Yeah.
Even if, like, there are alternative products, it's like, well, they're just not as good. You know, like, if it gets to the point where it's like, and we're not at that point yet with, like, silicon. Like, NVIDIA does have some great options, but AMD is still price competitive and, you know, has options. Like, computers, there is enough inherent competition in that market where, like, you still have an option. But, like, that's what's going to happen with AI. You're going to get to the point where it's like, well, this is just better. Like, we're just going to employ AI assistants because they're just better. You know, they're just cheaper. They don't get tired. They don't need breaks.
24/7, mate.
They're just better. And then it's like, okay, whoa. Like, that's effectively a monopoly, a technological monopoly on a service. And that's the problem with AI is, like, it's such a broad. It has the potential ability to impact so many different. That's why it's priced so high. But, like, if it gets bad, it's like, well, we need to regulate it, and that's where governments have to step in and protect their citizens. Like, it's not like it's not like David and Goliath. Well, that's a terrible example, but it's not like they're, like, standing over you physically protecting you. It's like you need to be protected from broader economic influence, and that's typically like when Australia was. I mean, Australia's always been going well, like, generally because of our strong exports and whatever, but at some stage, that's all going to come crashing down. It's like, how does the government then protect us? And is it their job to even protect us? Like, some people would argue that no, you need to protect yourself. You need to be able to.
Yeah, and it also depends as well on, like, the position you want to take. So if you've read a book called Sovereign Individual, which I don't know if you have.
Sovereign Citizens? Let's go.
Semi.
Okay.
It's sovereign citizen adjacent in that it basically makes the case that with, like, the advent of, like, the internet and stuff, the idea of a nation state defined by geographical location doesn't really make sense, because I can hold currency in a different nationality, I can work in a different nationality, and so it's just like, but I'm physically located here. That's a question. I have read the book, and that is a question the book doesn't actually solve. Is like, yes, while notionally you can hold all your assets and work elsewhere, it's
what makes you still.
Yeah, it's just like, you know, if you still live in somewhere in a particular physical place, and someone comes up and was like, so how about you transfer all that shit to me, or I'll beat your head in with a brick.
Yeah, physical security is a big part of.
Yeah, and you know, until you're digitizing consciousness or something like that. But then even if you do that, it's just like, is that distributed across a geographically diverse network?
Digital ransoms, you know.
Yeah,
Give me all your Bitcoin, or I'll pull the plug.
The book does try and, like, solve, like, its answer to that question is, like, it alludes to some future technology use where, you know, if you are physically endangered or killed, you know, you can have, like, contracts open upon your death
That would
to basically pay another assassin to assassinate the person who assassinated you, kind of thing. But doesn't make any explanation as to how that would be activated, the conditions on which, is like, you know, is there some judicial system that decides, actually, no, as a matter of fact, you were
that's
killed,
another
so now
point,
you can
I guess.
open it. So the regulation of all that stuff. So, yeah, will countries and nations, as we currently understand them, even exist into the future based on geographical location? Maybe not. I mean, you see people move to Spain to work remotely in the UK, kind of thing, because previously
it's
it was
globalization to the extreme. You know, like, I'll live in this market because it's cheap. I'll work in this market.
But then how does, like,
profitable.
the Spanish government, like, regulate
tax
that, right? Because they have taxation schemes for, like, foreign workers there, which are more generous than what they have for actual Spaniards.
Well, I think it becomes a problem for government. It's like, okay, well, either you can work here and we'll tax you effectively, or you just can't work here. But it's also like, there's the fringe benefits to that kind of stuff as well. Like, oh, you're expat, you live here, you probably got more money, you're going to spend products and services in this market, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, a question for another time.
Yes. So yeah, I don't know if we just spoke a lot about how government nowadays doesn't really work very well, and some of the private interests that influence that, which
Yes.
is probably fair enough because
That is
it's a
the
huge topic.
That is what it is. You know, like that is what government is these days. Something that doesn't work very well and has a lot of private interest. Yeah, what I would like to see is more publicly owned services, more publicly owned conglomerates, or maybe like profit shares. Or, I mean, this is in the realm of communism. Like we're getting pretty deep into some stuff, but I don't know. Like I just think it's not working for. It's working for me. I'm doing okay, but for a lot of people, it really has become a tension point of like, well, the government doesn't work for me anymore, and that's the feeling I think is that a lot of people think it doesn't work for me, and it needs to work for everyone. Otherwise, things fall apart.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think there should be some more government services. I think a lot of them haven't worked in recent history because of the effects of, I'll just say, neoliberalism. And the effects that has had on their ability to operate. But I think a lot of people have just lost the ability to believe in government as well. And it's like, and how do you win their hearts and minds back?
Trust. It's public
Yeah.
trust. I think public trust, you're right, is at probably all-time lows.
Yeah.
I mean,
And how do you win public trust back? It's like, well, it's almost like a catch-22 sort of thing. Because it's like you need to have something, and be able to deliver something to get people to trust you.
I think it's the rising
But then
rising
people
tide.
don't trust you until you can. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, unless.
You need that rising tide to lift everyone.
So
you
for
know,
now, an intractable problem.
the best kind.